Hey folks, you know I take my trail camera intel pretty seriously. It's a huge part of how I build my hunting strategy, and I'm always looking for gear that just flat out works. Stuff I can rely on. Backed by solid people and the best customer support in the business. That's exactly why I run Tacticam Reveal cell cameras. Whether you're just getting started or you're a full-blown data junkie like me, they've got a camera to fit your budget and your hunting style. My go-to currently is the Reveal 3.0 series with fully integrated GPS. These things are dead simple to set up. Less fiddling, more scouting and hunting. And they run on most major service providers and will automatically connect you to the strongest signal in your area. So no more hiking to the top of a ridge just to realize you've got the wrong service provider. Been there, not fun. Here's the kicker. You don't even need an SD card. That means fewer trips in, less pressure on your spots, and more real-time intel sent straight to your phone. And if you pair it with a Reveal solar panel or a lithium cartridge, you can keep those cameras running longer and spend more time doing what actually matters. Scouting new ground, dialing in a setup, or maybe, just maybe, finally cleaning the garage like you told your wife you would before the season started. Don't just take my word for it. Check out Tacticam Reveal at tacticam.com. Tacticam. Everything you need to take your hunting to the next level. Stay more comfortable, more concealed, and in the stand longer with Oscio gear. Premium camouflage apparel created for bow hunters by bow hunters. Oscio's revolutionary patented camo patterns and innovative features are designed to keep whitetail bow hunters totally invisible and dead quiet. Elevate your game with Oscio. Visit asiogear.com and take 20% off your purchase with code TRUTH20. If you're like me, e-scouting isn't just part of the process, it is the process. And nobody's doing it better than Spartan Forge. This is a veteran-owned company that built the only science-based scouting platform on real GPS collar data and artificial intelligence to predict deer movement. But where it really shines is with their imagery. Spartan Forge now has a high-res UAV coverage for 80% of the whitetail states, down to 5-centimeter detail. That means you can see trails, old logging roads, cuts, even subtle vegetation changes that most apps completely miss. And if you really want to get nerdy, their LiDAR layer breaks right through the canopy so you can see the forest floor. Gives you some visibility to those hidden draws, ditches that big bucks absolutely love to live in. Add in historical wind data and a desktop-only features like Eagle Eye and Cyber Scout, and you've got the most advanced hunting app out there. Start your risk-free 14-day trial today at spartanforge.ai. Welcome to the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast, brought to you by Tacticam Reveal Cellular Cameras. I'm your host, Clint Campbell, and you're listening to episode number 484. Today, I'm joined by my buddy, Tony Peterson, to talk about the rules of deer hunting and why they're often wrong. So stay tuned. All right, folks, welcome back to another episode of the Truth from the Stand Deer Hunting Podcast. Got my good buddy, Mr. Tony by God Peterson. What's going on, dude?
Not much, brother. Just watching the snow melt in March here.
Yeah, I know, right? Have you guys getting any of the warm stuff? Because I know I want to say it's like mid-70s as I'm sitting here right now in a sweatshirt, which is stupid.
I haven't seen mid-70s in a while, but we did get some really, really nice weather. And, March, at least where I live, March is just the worst because we get that, right? You'll get those 50-degree days for a while where you want to run outside and work on the garage. You just want to be out there in the sun. Mm-hmm. And then that night you got a snowstorm roll in. You're like, son of a bitch, like another false start here. And for us, my birthday's in mid-April, and I spend, once every like 5 years, 6 years on my birthday, it'll be a blizzard. And you're like, this is just stupid. Like this is not how we're supposed to live.
Yeah, I'm a mid-April guy too. And my birthday, it's funny, we'll have to trade birthdays after this, just to see how close we are. But I'm the same way. Like we don't get the blizzard. Like once in a while we'll get snow in April. That's very rare. But what happens to me usually is that there's a tournament or a couple tournaments, jiu-jitsu tournaments that I like to do in April. And I do them around my birthday because as I get a year older, I like to remind myself that I'm still alive. Right. And I can still go do hard things, and I can still go compete, and I can still, I still got it. You know what I mean? Like trying to fool myself for another year. Like, you're good, dude. Like, you got it. And so what I usually do is do that tournament or one of them. And then we usually have like a barbecue at the house where it's like we invite all the guys over from the gym typically, and have like a hangout. Burgers, we'll order in some like barbecue, and I'll sit outside and have a cigar and a bourbon, like just a good hang, you know? And the first year we did it like the weekend around my birthday, whenever that tournament was. And it was great. Like we had just beautiful weather. It was like that awesome spring day. It was like low to mid 60s. So it was great to be outside playing some like, you know, lawn games and whatever, fire pit, that type of thing. The next year we went to do it and it was like 38 and raining. You know what I mean? So
Right.
we were like, yeah, we got to start doing these in May. I was like, because
Right.
this April weather doesn't jive. So
Oh, it sucks, man. It's just such a mentally such a downer when you sort of move out of the winter mode and then it just won't leave.
Yeah, that's where I'm at now. It's like I'm out of winter mode, specifically because I'm actually headed to, well, as I put this out next week, as this drops, I'll actually be in Iowa at that point. So I'm leaving for Iowa Friday morning and scouting Saturday, Sunday, Monday. And then I'm going to be there for the week, scouting the evenings after work and stuff like that as much as I can. But I was looking at the weather and it's like Friday, Saturday, weather's awesome, like 50s, right? Beautiful to be out scouting, some shed hunting, right? And then Sunday I look and I'm like, okay, it's going to snow or mix, like sleeting, like, you know, frozen mix essentially, right? And the high is like 49 or 48 or something. I'm like, it's not terrible. I'll be wet, but it won't suck. And then Monday, I took the day off, high of 27, low of 18. I'm like, what is I was like, how do I pack for like 54 to like 18? You know what I mean?
Right. I knew exactly what you were saying. We've been following the forecast pretty tightly here. My daughters and I are trying to find a window to go shed hunting in southeastern Minnesota. And we've been these little pop-up snowstorms that drop like 3-4 inches of snow. They've just killed us for our chances. Mm-hmm. And so I've been looking at that forecast because we're heading to Florida the end of March. Mm-hmm. And I saw that. I'm like, as soon as you started talking about that, I'm like, I knew that because up here they were calling for like single digits. Over where I hunt in Wisconsin, they were calling for below 0. And you're like, come on, man. Like enough of this shit. Like,
yeah,
we don't need this anymore.
No, I'm done. It was a little, you get a little taste. Like I was able to go outside and like shoot the longbow, and I was like, oh man, this feels good. Like out in the yard, I don't have to shoot at the bag target in the basement anymore, right? And then it's just like, March is a cruel bitch. She just snatches it back from you.
You know, she does. I would say this year, a lot of my mood by this time of the year is predicated on whether I think all the animals I love are going to get killed by the winter. And we had, you know, because man, where I live, you just know that a certain amount of winters in every decade are going to knock back your deer and your pheasants for sure. And you know, the pheasants are one, you know, I can always find deer. It sucks when they get knocked back, but like when the pheasant population here gets knocked back, it just ruins my year because I know what those down years are like. And even, you know, the way that we've carried through with the warm spells we've had. I mean, I went down to where we pheasant hunt a lot and did a bunch of deer scouting in February. And there wasn't any snow on the ground. And when you see that in February, you're like, they're fine. You know, because this time of year is when that winter severity really gets to them. Was when when we get a bad March, bad early April, that's when our critters die. So I'm like, I'm trying to like find a silver lining there and be like, you know what? There's going to be a shitload of roosters next year. Like, not all my Wisconsin deer are going to be dead. It'll be okay. Just quit complaining and get through it.
Right. Yeah. Easier said than done. Like mine is, you know, my scouting. Well, so we had all that snow and then we did get a nice break where it warmed up and it rained and it melted it all off. And I won't say that it got warm, but it got warm enough that where it melted off the snow from that first batch that we got. And I was super stoked because I was like, man, I'm going to be able to get up to that north piece and go up and do some scouting. Cause I never, just based on the weather and schedule and stuff like that, primarily the weather, I usually don't get to get up there at earliest is April till like the roads get cleared enough to where you can actually get around and it makes sense. And there's all the snows off the tops and stuff like that. And I thought I was going to be able to get up there early. And then I ate a toe hold at the gym and popped my ankle and couldn't walk that weekend that we actually had like good weather to go do it. And then right after that, we got pounded with snow again. So I missed like my little like 3-day window to go get like early scouting done there. And so now at this point, like headed to Iowa, come back. It's like, it'll be April again until I actually get up there and get any work done.
Yeah. And then your window is pretty tight.
Yeah. Well, at that point, I'm like, it is what it is. Like, I'm gonna have to just deal with it and hope for the best. I mean, I guess the silver lining is that most of my fall next year will be spent in Iowa, so
Right.
It's not imperative, right? But it also just puts me behind for the following year, though, because like everything as you know, it's like you just kind of stack things on top of each other, and it's like the more I know now, the less I have to figure out later, or I just add that to what I figure out next off season when I plan to spend a lot of time there that coming fall or whatever the case is.
So you know for sure you're going to draw the unit you want?
Yeah, I have enough points. I've got more than enough points. Like I could have drawn probably 2 years ago. It would have probably been on the fence type of thing. But I ended up, hunting that buck that was in PA that I chased one year, and I probably would have been like 85% certain to draw last year if I wanted to go. But I chose to go back to Kansas because Chad and I could go. We were synced back up again. And so I just put it off for another year, and I was like, well, I'll just go this year. And it was because my daughter will be off to college, so the amount of time I can spend out there is not hamstrung by like having a kiddo at home, right? So it's like, it's just the wife at that point, and she'll be okay without me for about 2 months. It'll be fine.
Right. I have quite a few buddies who have a bunch of points in Iowa, and they're hemming and hawing when they should draw. I have the opposite problem in Iowa. I'm like the kid, that little experiment where they're like, you can eat a marshmallow now, or you can have 2 in a little bit. I'm like, I want that marshmallow right now, man.
Give it to me.
Right. So my days of hunting any of the good units in Iowa are over, but I don't care. Like it's just, especially with the gun season here, the way that it is in my state, that's like the biggest thing for me. It's like, oh, that whole month of November, that's amazing, but I think I won't. I don't think I'll even apply this year. I think I'll draw next year, but I think I'm going to draw the shittiest unit in Iowa and see what I can scrape up.
Yeah, I mean, I won't. I mean, I know Chad did that the one year, and he had some great hunts, and Cameron did it too, and he had some great hunts, and they went to a place where you could draw with more frequency, I guess is one way to say it. And that's something I've contemplated too, is just, similar to you. It's like, I probably won't draw because where I hunt typically is in one of the premier kind of sections, you know what I mean? And it's great, but I also don't want to necessarily wait like 5 to 6 years to be able to do it again, So I'm kind of in the same boat where I'm like, maybe I'll just look for some other places that just don't get as much fanfare, and still be able to have a good hunt, because they're still Iowa deer. They're going to act like Iowa deer. The pressure's still going to be low comparatively, what I'm used to comparatively. Will they, any place in Iowa, in my opinion, can grow a gagger. You just may not have as many of them. And if you're not sold out on trying to kill a gagger, then you're going to have a great time, And that's why for me this year, I was like, I'm kind of selling out. I'm going to do what I did last year, which is I'm going to go out there for weeks like I did in Kansas this year, and maybe even a little bit longer, because knowing that this is the last time I'll probably be in one of the premier areas. And I'm like, and I know there's really good deer there. And I'm like, man, if I just give myself enough time, can I find like that Iowa deer that everyone wants to try to kill, right? Because they're there. It's just like anything else. Like, you got to be able to spend the time there to find them, which is why going out now to scout, I'll probably make another trip in the summer to go do some glassing, right? To try to lay eyes on something. And then if I can turn something up while I'm glassing and some good stuff with my scouting, that'll kind of probably dictate how early I show up. Right. Because if I think I have a good beat on something, it's like I might show up beginning of the season and just stay there until Thanksgiving,
Dude, not the last time I drew, but the time before that, because of my schedule with filming Back 40, I had to go down and hunt in October, and I had a freaking blast. Like, that might be the secret to a lot of public land hunting in Iowa. Like, literally, I mean, what I found, I've had great rut hunts, but the difference in pressure on the place I hunted, because I hunted the same chunk of public, or same group of public land, the difference in pressure from the end of October, from the beginning. I hunted opening day that year, and I was like, there's nobody here. And it's October. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, Even in the campground I was at, everything I was like, there's just, I almost had my pick of where I could go. When I went down there the last time I drew there, which was in 2024, so 4 years later, I was on like my fifth spot before I found a place that didn't have a truck.
Right.
And so I just look at that and I go, man, if you could draw a bead on one of those really big deer and get on some water or get on some food somehow, I really think that your competition's just not going to be there. You know,
Yeah.
I mean, I should say this, like if it's a really big one and people are
Well,
aware of
yeah.
it, maybe, but I don't know. I mean, and, you know, the other thing too, like when we're talking about those kind of the lesser units, the ones that aren't always in the South or whatever that people want to go to, or the Northeast corner. I mean, we pheasant hunt some of those units, and the quality of deer that run ahead of the dogs in those cattail sloughs, you're like, everybody wants to draw to Iowa because they, you know, you got your chance at your 180, right? But really, it's the concentration of like 120s to 150s or 140s that makes Iowa so fun for, you know, like for most people. If you're not going to pay to get on a place or have just banging access, like that shit's just fun. Like most people don't hunt around that, you know, and like, it's just a different thing, you know, and you're like, oh, I could shoot a 130 at home. I'm like, yeah, I know. But like, you could also shoot one there and it'd be great, you know?
Yeah. And watch him do like a bunch of cool stuff, right? Because just like you see those type of deer, like for example, in PA, but you know, because the last time I was out there, I saw one just absolute gagger. At that point, it was the biggest deer I had ever seen. And I put him at probably like 180-ish inches, like roughly, right? And I bumped him out of this draw that I stopped in this like CRP patch and was glassing. And I glassed that draw thinking that there might be a big one in there. It would be a perfect place for it to lay up. Didn't see him. Stood there for like 5 minutes and just made sure nothing was moving, and bent over to pick up my pack off the ground, took 2 steps, and he jumped, boom, was gone. It was like, I was only like 50 yards from him, right? And I just remember, again, at that point in my life, like that was the biggest deer I had ever seen on the hoof. And I was like, you gotta be kidding me. I was like, that thing is huge. And then I ended up cutting his track later. So, and his track was like the size of my hand. It was dumb how big that track was. And so my plan is to actually go back to that spot, because that was the only time I really spent there. Was like, I saw that deer. And then from there, it's like I tried to cut a track and see like maybe where he was spending additional time. And so I just kind of did like a quick loop. And when I started looking at it on the map, like there just looked like a bunch of really good stuff, right? But I ended up hunting a bunch of different areas, and I killed a deer in a completely different spot, not even close to that. But the point being was, that was really the only, that and one other deer I saw was like really big. Like he was like a 160-inch, roughly like 8-point, right? And the only reason I know that is because a buddy of mine had a trail camera in the general area and had him on camera. So I knew what deer it was, and he was freakishly big. And then from there, it was like, you know, I missed, and I told this story 100 times, but I missed like a really good, like mid 140s 8, which is a great buck. And then I saw like a good 130, and I rattled in a 9-point that I probably should have shot like the one day, right? Like, and he was probably like 130 inches, right? It's just like, but it was just watching deer do deer stuff and like calling them in and rattling them in and snort wheezing and watching them work a licking branch or make a rub or whatever the case is, that you don't, because I don't know if this was your experience, but I saw probably $5 to every one doe I saw on that trip. That was kind of like the ratio for me. And it was just crazy because the inverse is true, like where I live, you know? And so it's just the different feeling of being in the woods, knowing that like, one, there could be a giant around, and 2, the chances of me seeing some bucks that night are pretty good. So that's just fun, right? As opposed to hunting around here where it's like I go out some nights and don't see anything, right?
Well, I mean, that's the secret to that stuff, or like a huge component of it, is you actually hunt always with the expectation of that. And you think about how often in a lot of places where you just, not only do you not have the expectation to see a big deer, you don't really have an expectation to see bucks or sometimes even does. And that's like, I mean, it's crazy. I've always been super surprised by this. Like, you find states and you find areas of public land where I'm like, this is objectively better and more fun to hunt than some of the better private land places I've gotten through, like knocking on doors and stuff, which is crazy. And it's like, you know, it's so variable, right? Like people just paint a broad brush on public land. And we are kind of like, I definitely paint it in a positive light generally because I just want people to use it. And I think that I think it's underappreciated in a lot of ways, but you see a lot of people just go the other way with it, like so negative about it. And I'm like, man, there's a lot of good hunting on public land out there. Like I was at a basketball tournament with my daughter, or that my daughter was playing in a couple weeks ago. And one of the other basketball dads pulled out his phone and he started showing me some sheds that his brother was finding in Western Minnesota on public. And they were like 80-inch sheds. And we started talking about it. And he's like, yeah, it's like the best covers on public out there and all the big bucks are in there. And I'm like, I know. Like, it's crazy. But that's where the best cover is. You know, like if it can be farmed, they're going to farm it. And I was like that too, to some extent, where it's like, if they can run a plow over that sucker somewhere, if there's an acre that they can till up, they're going to till it up. Right?
Yep.
They just are. And if they can't, then that land has a higher likelihood of being public than not. And so it's like, there's so many things like that out there, whereas once you sort of get out of your little world, and, you know, like I always think about like how I viewed whitetails growing up and where I hunted and, you know, how it sort of shaped my thought or my thought process. And then you start traveling and you're like, this is what I believed was probably not even true about where I was hunting. It just made me feel better about not being good at it. Right. But then you start moving around and seeing new things and you're like, most of what I grew up believing about whitetails, I just fundamentally don't believe anymore. And I think like that the antidote to just being that way and like getting stuck in that mindset is just like doing something different.
Yeah. Like, what do you think is one thing, like, I guess I'll ask it this way. What is something that maybe you believed 10 years ago that you've changed your mind about in like related to hunting?
10 years ago?
Or I mean, you can use any time frame you want, but I'm just trying to frame up like the perspective, right? It's like, what is something that you believed at one point in your life, like in your hunting life, that you look at now and like either you changed your mind on it, it's complete opposite, or like you just overall think differently about it now?
Well, one thing for sure is that I think there are bigger bucks. I think there are good sized bucks almost everywhere. Like almost everywhere where there's a remotely decent population of deer, some of those deer are going to get old. And deer getting old is just the secret, right? Like, you know, we talk about genetics and stuff a lot and whatever, but it's like, I honestly think that like in most places, and we see this with trail cameras now, you know, there's not a ton of them, but they are there. And like, I remember growing up just thinking, you know, there's just no way. There's like no way there's big bucks in this woods because I never, ever see them. And it's, you know, every once in a while a gun hunter would kill one, or, you know, in the summer you'd be glassing the bean field and you're like, oh my God, there's a 150, you know. They're more prevalent than we used to think, you know. But that's also sort of, we know this now because we see them, because everybody has trail cameras, and it's just like we have a different way of keeping track of big ones now. What I love about it is that they're still really hard to kill. Like even, you know, in fact, I think we actually, I think that we look at that and go, well, okay, I have 30 acres I hunt, or 50 acres or whatever. And the biggest deer that comes through there is this beautiful 140 10 pointer. You in your head, you run those cameras and you're like, well, he came through, you know, July, August, showed up when he was hardhorn for a little bit, whatever. And we take from the world of deer management and hunt that deer the way they kind of do. And it doesn't work, because that deer is not their deer. And I think that it's interesting how we have kind of learned that there are a lot of big deer out there on public land in PA and a lot of places. Like, people figured out how to find them. Killing them is a different story. And I look at it and I think part of the reason for that is just because in the process of us just collectively learning that, yeah, there's good ones out there. Like 130s are great and they're there. We've also been inundated with this sort of the management style of hunting, and we've internalized that generally, and it doesn't work for those deer. Like, it doesn't work for those deer that are being raised to be big deer on a place, you know, like those are the survivors that are living by a totally different set of rules. So even though we've got better knowledge now and better information, we actually kind of use it in the wrong way.
Yeah. That's one of the reasons why I really like talking to guys like, and I just got a lot of respect for the guy that I'm about to mention, Nathan Killen. Like that guy, I think it's just so important we have people like him around who is just the consummate woodsman.
Right.
You know, like he hunts the mountains in Virginia where there supposedly aren't big deer, right?
Right.
Typically does it with a stick bow, right? Typically kills one just about every year, right? And when you have guys like that and they're tracking down and he's tracking down, usually typically it's like a singular buck that he's after, you know, and we're talking like big woods. Now, even though it's southern, right, it would be equivalent to like what you would run into like Wisconsin or whatever. We're talking like tens upon tens upon tens of thousands of acres, right, of national forest and things of that nature.
Yep.
And when you talk to him about how he is hunting a deer, like he may only have one trail camera picture of that deer. That's it. And he'll figure out a way to kill him, you know, and he just has a way of understanding how they want to use like that land, you know, and it's not, to your point, if he tried to kill any of those deer by taking the managed approach of deer, and like I'm slowly but surely evolving, like in trying to understand and get there, right? Because I'm kind of stuck in this middle ground where, you know, you use trail cameras. I like historical data because it helps me kind of like make a picture, right? And it just seems so odd to me that he doesn't need the picture at all. He just needs proof of life, whether that's a picture of the deer one time, a rub that he knows is that deer's rub, a track that he knows is that deer's track. And that's all he needs, right? And then he's off to hunt that deer.
But but what you said though, I mean, that is just woodsmanship. Like when you take the easiest whitetails are the most visible ones, right? Like that's why it's so fun when you go out to Kansas and you can see them. You're like, oh my God, like I have gotten so much information out of that deer crossing that CRP or whatever. It's just different, you know? And then when you reduce that down into the big wood scenario where you just don't see them, like you very, very rarely lay eyes on them. If you lay eyes on them, it's because you're hunting.
Well, that's what he says. He's like, he usually only ever sees the deer he's trying to kill one time.
Right.
And it's usually when he kills him.
Right.
That's it.
But that's somebody who has to learn that deer. Like So we think about, you know, using trail cameras and you're like, oh, I'll throw a trail camera on a scrape and this buck comes in here and does this. And it's like that you're learning that deer and you're learning deer. Like there's nothing wrong with it, but he's learning that deer. Like he's like these rubs, that trail, that bench, that bed, this is that deer's property, you know, like it's like a forensic thing in a way where we are always sort of defaulting to what we can do to sort of trick ourselves into thinking we're getting the best information, you know, and being safe at the same time. But he's going in there and he's finding it. And like, there's like a passive approach to it where you can put the trail cameras out and like, it's a necessary thing in some places. And and if you use it right, it works. But his approach, he's like, there's no crutches. Like I gotta go learn the land and how this deer has plugged himself into it. And that shit's just awesome. Like that. Yeah. That's the coolest stuff. I don't know if you listened or not. Steve did an episode of the Meat Eater podcast a couple weeks ago with a animal language expert. I did a foundations episode on it and kind of broke it down, but this dude studies, you know, how ravens communicate. What does this call mean versus that call? And why do prairie dogs make this sound when a coyote comes in, but not a domestic dog? And it was the most fascinating. I say this. So he gets into a little bit of like, you know, the deer, like he understands the deer as individuals, but not in the way we do. Like he likes them and wants them to live, and we like them and want them to die. You know, so like there's like that component, the anthropomorphizing type a little bit, but the knowledge that he dropped in there about animal sounds and the network of the soundscape out there, and how this critter hears the warning call of that critter, or this critter hears the woods get quiet because this bobcat's here. It was like a master course on woodsmanship. And And if you've been hunting a long time and you listen to it, and I think everybody who hunts should listen to it because the lessons in there are better than any rattling, decoying, calling, whatever strategy you're going to get from somebody who's a deer guy. This comes from not a deer guy, but it is about our impact on the woods and how everything responds to our presence, and how that buck that's bedded up on that bench is going to react to you walking in, whether he sees you or hears you or smells you or not, because he might know you're there because of the squirrels or because of the robins or because of whatever, or he might not come into your snort wheeze when you're in your stand because you've moved and some songbirds have called out a warning. Right. And it was just, to me, it was one of the things that I heard where I was like, intuitively, you kind of lean into that when you hunt enough. Right. Like I was thinking about like my strategy, and I've talked about this a million times, is if I have a day to hunt now, I just want to hunt. So like, I'm not looking for an excuse to get out of the woods. I'm looking for every reason to stay there. And so I've just started sitting longer in the morning, going out early in the afternoon. And if I can hunt all day, I'll hunt all day. And I kill more deer. And I'm like, well, duh, you're there longer, right? But you don't have that continued like ripple out effect of your presence, your negative presence going in there. And it actually makes me think like there's so many situations now where I was like, why couldn't I kill one there? What was going on? Like what was it that kept me from seeing the deer that were cruising by my cameras the whole time? And of course, if you have a really busy rut camera and you go in there and the conditions haven't changed, they've only gotten better, and that those deer don't come through, what's the most likely reason? Right? You. It's us, right? Yeah. So what do? We try to make something happen. So you're grabbing those rattling antlers and you're making a bunch of big movements and you're announcing your presence again. And it's like over and over and over again, or you just get, you get bored. And so you're moving around and not paying attention. And you are at a small scale making a little wave that's rolling out. And those critters around you know it. And you might not, we probably all tune out squirrels at some point, unless they're just right on you and they're just pissing you off, like those ones. Yeah. But there's all kinds of stuff like that happening. And it made me, I'm actually looking at my fall differently this year and how I can take some of those spots that have kicked my ass where I just can't figure it out. Like I have one specifically in Wisconsin where it's the biggest discrepancy in my head between what I expect and what I get. Right. What I get is no deer and what I expect is big deer. And it pisses me off. And it's been like 3 years of trying to figure this out. And I cannot figure it out. Like I get the wind right. I run cameras there year round because I own it. It's a little property I own. I got the stand set up correctly. Like I'm confident that I haven't screwed up in any way. And I was like, it's bothered me so much. And then I heard that podcast and I was like, it's in a little, just a little grove of old pine trees in a much bigger tract of woods. I only have a little bit, but there's 500 acres of swamp to the north of me. It's big, right? But it's covered in pine squirrels and they are bitching me out constantly. And it's covered in blue jays during the rut and they are bitching me out constantly. And I'm like, is that all it takes? Because those deer are pressured. Like there are not that many of them and they get pressured hard. And I'm like, I can't, it's like an elimination diet. I'm like, well, I did this. I got rid of this. I'm like, why am I still fat? What's going on here? Right. And I'm going to go in September this year. I don't want to do this, but I'm going to. I'm going to put up a ground blind and I'm going to brush that sucker in. And when I hunt that, I'm going to hunt the same spot the same way, but I'm going to go in and I'm going to be in a blind where I'm not impacting all those other little critters. And I'm going to see if that changes things or not. I think it will. Maybe not. Like maybe I still have it wrong, but that kind of information out of that guy who's not telling you how to hunt is just pure woodsmanship. Right. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I got to go back. I got to go listen to that now because that's one thing that I think what you said when, we intuitively kind of start to listen and pay attention, but we may not digest the meaning every time that something like when a little ripple kind of happens in the woods. Cause I know for me, especially if I'm sitting and it's been quiet all day. Not seeing deer, but I'm also not hearing or seeing squirrels or birds or whatever the case is. And if all of a sudden something fires off, like that immediately tells me like something happened. Like I don't know what it is. It may or may not be a deer. It may be a fox ran through there. It may be a couple turkeys passed through the area, or like whatever it was, right? But something happened over there, and so I try to pay more attention to that stuff. And, if birds start chirping or whatever the case is, if for nothing else than to fool myself, because you and I have talked about this in the past, especially, you and I chatted after I was chasing that big deer, and you asked me, how did you stay diligent for like 30 some odd days? And I said, I just had to tell myself every day it was the day I was going to kill him. I had to convince myself of it, because if I didn't, I couldn't do that walking into known failure day after day after day. And so to me, it's like I kind of use those little, moments in the woods whenever something fires off as a way to kind of reconvince myself to kind of dial in, right? Where it's like I heard something, like, oh, it could happen right now. Right. Something's moving over there. And I'll convince myself that it was a deer, only to keep myself like present and in the game. Even though I know probably 95% of the time it's not going to be, right? Or even if it is, I may not see it. Right. But it's the little tricks that we play to keep ourselves, on top of it and engaged in the hunt and paying attention to things and noticing the nuance and the little details and things like that. Because as you've said, you and I talking, like those things probably matter more than the larger kind of things that you trail camera pictures and whatever the case is. It's those little things in those moments that really are going to tell the tale a lot of times.
Right. I mean, there's like a couple of things that I think about with this. So, and I put this in this Foundations episode, but where I shoot in my yard, my targets are right on the edge of this little pond in our backyard. Actually, it's not that little. We share ownership with it with like 4 of our neighbors. But in the spring, when the frogs are going, it's like deafening loud. It's awesome. You sleep with the window open. It's great. But when I shoot, I stand out by the street and I shoot to the targets. Then when I walk up to the targets to grab my arrows, there's a rolling wave of just all of the frogs shut off, the frogs and the toads. So the close ones see you, and I know the ones across the pond have no idea I'm there. You know what I mean? There's like grass growing in the swamp and stuff. It's like they're just keying off and they're like, well, those guys stop, we're stopping. And then they'll start up again and it'll roll back in eventually. But I think about this, this actually hit me last year when I was hunting in North Dakota. There's one little cattle tank that I really like to hunt out in this place that I hunt. And I've killed a few deer off of it, and it's very limited water in a really cool spot. It's a bitch to get to. There's the best bedding cover around there. There's not a lot of bedding cover. It's maybe like, I don't know, 10, 12 acres, but out there it's like really good stuff for that area. And if I walk in there at any point when the sun's out, I almost always blow something off of it, whether it's a deer bedded close by, whether it's doves, robins, some songbirds coming through, something. And I always think about that because I'm like, I'm close enough to each end of this like bedding area. It's only a couple 100 yards either way, where those doves all blowing out there at the same time. They don't, those deer might not know that it was a person that walked in there, but they know it was something. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah,
they're and it's like, if they're thirsty enough, they might come in. But you think about a big buck and he hears that and it's lion country and there's coyotes. And so he might hear that and go, you know what? I'm either going to wait till dark and swing downwind or just not go in there. I'll just go to the river and take a different route. And I know that's like putting a lot of thought into their head. And I don't know if they think that way. I kind of doubt it, but maybe. But I always think about that. I'm like, who knows, right? Like I see my dog make decisions and calculations. Like I don't know why a big buck wouldn't, but even if they don't, if you were laying there and you bedded in there every day or 3 times a week all fall, and every time you heard those doves take off in the middle of the day and you went over there, you smelled a fresh lion, fresh coyote, fresh person, whatever, you'd be like, when I hear that, I know what's going on over there.
Right. You have a negative association with that sound.
Sure.
Right. It's like, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say on that podcast, that dude talked about, the different calls a bird will make if a lion is hunting or a bobcat is hunting versus just strolling on through. Like they can recognize hunting behavior. And I was like, that's why every freaking time a feral cat goes by your tree stand, the deer lose their shit. Like they don't, I don't know if you've ever had that happen. I was filming a couple years ago. I've had it happen several times to me, but it just started to get good in the evening. We were in a really good spot, had a couple does come out, had a little buck working in, and a freaking house cat starts going down the edge of the beans. And I told my camera guy, I'm like, this is over. This is going to spoil the whole scene. Because they don't blow out. They back off. They blow at it. And I'm like, why would a full-size deer care about a house cat? But then I'm like, it's hunting. Like it's just seeing hunting movements and sneaky behavior. And it's like, you know? And you think about stuff like that. There's probably 10 million things about deer behavior related to the animals around them that we have totally tuned out because we don't really need to know it. And I always think, you talk about Nathan, I always think people like that. They spend enough time there they're just plugged in at a level on that stuff that most people never get to. Like I had a buddy in northern Minnesota when I lived up there who was a wildlife photographer, and I had walked through the woods with him, and I was just like blown away by what he knew. And it was because he spent the entire year outside photographing everything. He was a good deer hunter, but he was just into animals. And it was like, yeah, that berry there, this songbird eats that this time of the year. Sometimes you see the deer on it, but only if it's these conditions. And I was just like, there's no substitute for that.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you can kill deer other ways, obviously, but that stuff is like the coolest shit, man.
Well, it's like the most repeatable,
Right.
because like you don't have to rely on anything. Like there's no,
right.
It's just going in and figuring it out. It doesn't matter how things change or to what magnitude it changes, because your process of just observing and being immersed is just how you is just your being. Right. Like there's not an intent behind it necessarily. I don't want to say they do it like people don't do it by accident. It's a learned skill for sure, but that's just their nature when they're out. Like, if you take a guy like Nathan or just, any of these guys that are like, that we would consider to be really sharp woodsmen, it's not a concerted effort. Like, I'm in the woods, I need to do this. It's just how they're wired when they walk in. Right. And anybody could be that, but you just have to, for them, it's just from years of doing it and just doing it that way, because there wasn't another option probably for a long time, for example, right? Because it's interesting because a lot of these guys that I've had on the show, and guys that as well, and even you and I to a degree, because Nathan, I think, is just a little older than we are, if I'm not mistaken. We're not too far apart in age, if I remember correctly, just using him as an example. But fellas like that who lived in and around an area like that and those big woods like that, like that's where he grew up hunting and in that environment. So if you were ever going to be good at it, it wasn't because of volume, it's success. It was because of volume effort. Right. Was really the key to it. And based on, him being relatively close to our age, maybe just slightly older, he also had to develop that in a time where there wasn't any shortcuts. Like there were no real, there were trail cameras, but not like we know them today. Like they might as well have not had trail cameras even like during the first ones, right? Because they were so inefficient, inaccurate,
they were huge,
et cetera. Yeah, and so he didn't have mapping apps. He didn't have all these things to learn like some of the toughest terrain you could possibly hunt in the country, yep. and he had to just do it by being in it. Right. And that's the part now that I think sometimes, when people, wonder, how does someone do that? It's well, you almost have to strip things away from yourself to force yourself to just exist in it.
You literally have to be free from the rules.
Yes.
Like I think when
there are no rules, and that's the best part of it. Yeah.
When you think about that, so I've talked about this a whole bunch, but I've always just hunted valleys. I love hunting valleys. right?
Mhm.
And when I started doing that, because where I lived in the bluff country in Minnesota, that was just, if you didn't hunt there, you didn't have that many places to hunt. You were hunting ridge tops and field edges. And I just didn't, I don't know. I just hunted valleys. That's where the sign was. Like, I'd go in there and do it. And yeah, you get winded some, but there wasn't anybody saying that you couldn't because the wind's going to swirl. And
Right.
I've had conversations. I had a long conversation with Mark. We were filming something one time in Iowa, and we were in a spot where I was like, oh, this is a gauntlet. They would die coming through here, and they're going to come through here. And we got onto the topic of the wind. And, his default was like, you wouldn't get away with it in there. And my default was like, I would hunt this always. Obviously not if the wind was blowing straight down it, but the wind blows across, And I had a conversation with Giannis last year about his Wisconsin property. And it was kind of the same thing where he's already been told, because he's kind of newer in his whitetail journey, that you can't hunt those bottoms. And that takes out a whole bunch of what he hunts. And I'm like, I just go in and try it. Like, I just go in and try it, and that freedom. And I think part of that, when you talk about like Nathan and the big woods, low deer density stuff, you don't get to play it safe. You like once you play it safe once you actually do find a little concentration, but it's not like you're, the high deer density stuff where like they're going to show up, like you do it right and they're going to be there. You don't have that luxury, and like they're not visible, right? So you have to go in there and just be like, I have to do the work, and I'm going to bump deer, and I'm going to go into their bedrooms and whatever else, and I'm going to break every rule you're not supposed to break, but I have to, otherwise I'm not in the game at all. Right. And as soon as you start doing that, you start freeing yourself.
Yeah, and it's funny you mentioned that, because that was one of the things he and I talked about the last time I had him on, was just to kind of put a finer point on that, which was a lot of the areas he hunts is steep, right? And a lot of times, in that steep country, there might be, depending if you have any type of timber, like timbering that had been done in the area, or if there was any mining or anything like that, you'll often have, old roads, logging roads, mining roads, whatever the case is, that even if they're grown up, they act as benches, like man-made benches, essentially. Right. And, he said earlier in his hunting life, that bench was always attractive, because you would think to yourself, like, the path of least resistance, it's flat. There was always going to be scrapes or sign on that because it was flat. And so he would hunt it. And he said what ended up happening was I would be in the general right area, and I would maybe see the deer that I wanted to kill, but it would always be 50 yards away from me, side hilling on the steepest area in the thickest, like, mountain laurel on the side of the mountain. He was like, but he's like, that's the harder spot to hunt, because to your point, it's not flat. You're dealing with thermals because of all the obvious reasons. You're in the mountains, and it was going to be really, really hard to hunt. And you might get busted, right? Because it was going to be one of those, it's either going to work or it's not, type of thing. Right. But the only way I can kill this deer is to be there. Right. And basically he said, once he changed that and focused more on hunting those, we'll call them like hard to reach places or hard to hunt spots. And it doesn't mean that it was hard to get there per se, but it was just, it's not your ideal setup. When you would look at it, you would want to hunt somewhere else. You would want to hunt in that same area, but you would want to hunt 50 yards away, because it just seemed like it was a better, easier spot to hunt. Right. But he said, this place, right. He said, but the place you're going to kill him is in the spot that's the hardest spot to hunt. Right. Right. And when he realized that and started changing his approach to like his setups, and that was years ago, that wasn't like a new epiphany for him. It was just an idea that he and I were talking about. That was really what made the difference for him, was that.
Dude, as soon as you said that, I was like, those big bastards are always side hilling.
Always.
Yeah. And I totally agree with him. The one thing that I love about that stuff, though, is they can't side hill forever. Yeah. Like, you're gonna hit a washout. They got to go high or low usually. Yeah. But it's so true. And it's like, I'm sure there's more reasons than what I'm going to say. I mean, obviously he can play the thermals really well if he's right in the middle, right? But also, he can bail down, he can bail up. He's got escape options, but probably just concentration of hunting pressure. He's avoiding 95% of hunters because they're either going to be high or low, And so, I mean, it's right. It's stuff like that, but that's one of those things where trail cameras teach you a lot, like whether they can get you to change your behavior as a hunter, that's a different thing. But you can learn that stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. It's funny when you started mentioning bottoms, because it's funny how what you were talking about before. I think when you were talking about the valley, how you know the wind was swirled there, and there's always different perspectives. Like the conventional wisdom would say, yeah, you don't hunt bottoms because the wind is unpredictable, right? And that's often why you'll see a lot of sign in those areas, right? Because the wind thermals, et cetera, are usually dumping into those areas, and so at certain times of the day, the deer have a really good sense of what's around them for X, Y, and Z reasons. But you know, that doesn't mean that you can't ever. It means that there's probably the right time, and you got to kind of time it right. And as soon as you said that there was a spot, so where I saw that big deer in Iowa several years ago, the one spot that I marked to go scout, because I was doing some scouting, you know, kind of getting like some pins lined up of like, okay, I want to check out. I've hunted these areas. I'm probably not going to scout any of the areas I hunted in the past, because I kind of know, even if it was 5 years ago, 6 years ago, they're probably roughly the same, and I'll speed scout those whenever I get out there, like during hunting season. But I want to find some new areas, right? So I have some more spots to kind of bebop to and have some confidence. And there was one spot close to where I saw that big one that has all these finger ridges that dump down into this bottom, and then that bottom has basically a stream that runs through it that Ys. And where it Ys, it flattens out, and everything's kind of pouring into that. And there's two field edges, like not adjacent, like, you know, a couple 100 yards away up on the top. And I looked at that bottom, and I don't even need to put my feet there. And I'm like, I can promise you that a big deer is going to walk through there. There is probably hammer sign in there. And if I spend a little bit of time in there, I bet you I find a giant community scrape in that spot. And I immediately was thinking to myself, I need to figure out how to hunt that, but not the bottom. Until I started looking at it, and I was like, I'm only going to be there for a couple weeks. Like, I'm going to hunt it. You know, I'm not going to go in and hunt it stupid, but I was like, I'm going to try to figure out a way to go in and hunt that particular spot and make sure my access is good and, you know, all the things. But kind of like you, where I'm like, I would be stupid to not try to give, because I know every big deer in that area during the month of during late October on is going to go through that area.
Right. Well, right. And you're right. It's not going to hunt the same when the wind's coming from the east versus the west. It's not going to hunt the same when the wind's 5 miles an hour versus 25. It's not going to hunt the same if you're 17 feet up in a tree or you tuck into a deadfall. You know, like you have so many options to figure this stuff out. But if you don't hunt stuff like that because you're not supposed to, and you know you're going to get busted without trying, you've just taken yourself out of the game. Mm-hmm. Like, I mean, it would be like if somebody was like, rebuild this engine and you can have an entire toolbox, or we're going to give you a socket wrench and a crescent wrench. Good luck. You're like, You're never going to get it. It's never going to run. Right.
Right.
Like, you have so many more options. And I always look at this like, I think I almost hesitate to say this because I think it's made public land hunting recently kind of become easier in some capacities, because people think that staying out is the best option until it's like perfect. But you just got to go in and screw up. Like, you got to go in and try that stuff, because that's how you learn. Like, you go do that one time, you go sit in there when you're not supposed to, and that big sucker cruises through, even if he wins you, even if it goes exactly the opposite way you want it to and everybody else was right, you're going to look at that and go, what about 100 yards up that trail? Mm-hmm. Or what about where it's splayed out there and this creek arm he crossed here? Like, there's something to that. And that's the thing about this stuff, is like, you get so few chances to encounter big deer in your life. Like, really. I mean, when you think about it, it's, for most of it, it's very, very rare. But when you do, you always learn something. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, it's just different than having that forky come through, or a doe and two fawns or something. And like, every deer encounter is great. But when that, 130, 140, 150, whatever, does something and he shows you something. Like, I think about individual deer that I encountered, and most of them are ones I didn't kill, that I always kind of call back to, where it's like, yeah, but that deer came through October 10th
Mm-hmm.
Shouldn't have been there, shouldn't have done it, didn't kill him. The biggest deer I ever saw on that property, and you're always like, that's like part of the calculus, right? Like you're like,
Yeah.
I got to use that somehow. But if you play it safe all the time, it's just not going to work. And we think that's smart. Like, no, you have to go in, like you said, be calculated. You got to be smart about it. Like, you have to put in that effort to still really, really be hunting and trying to beat them. But you got to take a little bit of risk.
Yeah, you got to take a swing. You can't stand in the batter's box and watch strike 3 go by you. You know what I mean? At least I can't. Like that's not my MO. Like I said, like I wouldn't be crazy. Like I probably wouldn't dive in like right away, right? I would probably certainly scout it when I go out there, figure out, what wind is probably going to give me the best option to be as undetected as possible, right? To where it's like I'm not hurting myself to start, right? And then even whenever I get there, whenever I start hunting, it's like I probably won't dive right into it. I'll probably try to like take a little bit more of a conservative approach because I have time. If I didn't have time, I'd probably just jump right in, right? But I have time because I'm going to be there for a little while where I might go hunt that one. There's a really nice kind of transition line of habitat that kind of leads to it. And so that's the other spot that I've kind of looked at and kind of marked and where I was like, okay, this is probably like a line of travel, right? I imagine. There was another kind of a terrain feature where there's like a drainage that kind of comes up off of that where there's like a low spot. And I was like, all right, to not have to cross that drainage necessarily, I was like, I bet they're going to kind of cross at the top of that is probably going to be another spot where they might spend some time. And then I'll go validate all that stuff. But like just as looking at the map, like I've already kind of pinpointed 2 or 3 other areas where I could kind of see what the movement looks like before I have to take like sit on a fastball and take a cut. You know what I mean? Like that's not necessarily my first play. My first play is like, I'm going to try to like, I know he likes to throw a curve. I'm going to try to hit the curve first, but if I have to take the first 2 pitches, take swings and misses at him, well, the third one, I'm probably going to sit on fastball and play the risky game. But that's probably like how I would suss that place out. How would you hunt that spot?
Well, I mean, what you're saying there, your baseball analogy. So when we talk a lot about stuff like this, we talk about like the X, right? Like where absolutely is he going to go? But that's the beauty of stuff like that. So if you're like, I can't hunt down there, right? Because the wind's going to be too swirly. I got to play it safe and I got to hunt up on the ridge. Work your way in. Like if you have enough time to work your way in, watch it and see how you can get in there and see what they do when they go in there. Because that's the other thing too, is this. You look at that on X or whatever, and you're like, they're going to go here. They're going to be here. Every buck in the whole place is going to pass through this freaking, draw or whatever at some point. But how? When you look at it on X, it might be 100 yards wide or it might be 50 yards wide. But when you sit up over it and you watch them and you're like, God, they all come and do this. And that's the thing, when I look at spots like that, or I look at like figuring out something like that, where your brain is like, I don't think this is going to work. Like they're there because it's super hard to hunt. I don't know if I can overcome this. That's one of the reasons why I love traveling to hunt. And, if I'm in a place like that with 4 days to hunt and I could figure out a 2.5-year-old that's going to do that and I can kill him, that's a huge win.
Yeah.
Like I'm not filtering through to the point where it's like almost an impossibility. I'm working deer. And, like sometimes you figure it out and you kill a big one. But a lot of people sort of view this through the lens of like, I can't kill a big one there. I'm not going to do it. Like a big one would do this, a big one would that. He wouldn't go here. He wouldn't do this. And I'm like, a lot of times you gotta like work yourself into that. Like we talk about these specialists all the time who kill big bucks all the time. And that's great, but they're like specialists. They got something going on that most people don't. And I know people want to emulate that, but I'm like, if you have some of that mental block like that, like I always talk about, October hunting. Like, okay, you maybe you won't kill a 140. Go kill a doe. Go see if you can. Like if you always get into the same 3 tree stands, have you ever killed a deer from the ground? What about that spot that has no trees that you walk by and you jump deer out of, or at the end of the season when you're shed hunting and it's covered in rubs? There's so many things we can do to sort of, remove those mental blocks and get us to that next step. And that example that you're talking about there with this stream running through there, I'm like, that's so fun because if you know they're going to use it, now your job is just to watch it and figure it out, and if you make a mistake, you're going to encounter that kind of scenario down in Iowa. You're going to encounter it wherever, and you're going to be like, not this time. Like, I'm going to try this on this side, or I'm going to get on the ground, or I'm only going to go in there when it's dead calm or it's raining or whatever. And you just like sort of very incrementally start to remove those mental barriers and just go, now I have that as an option. It might not always work, might not work in those conditions. It might work with that seasonal timing, but at some point I'm going to make that happen there.
Yeah. I mean, the one cool thing about that is, you and I were talking a little bit about this before we started recording. It was just when you were saying there's guys that are specialists that are really, really good. That didn't happen by accident necessarily. They have to spend time honing their craft as part of it. Right. And that's the doing the hunting stuff. But there's also like part of it where you kind of start to sharpen your tools and things that maybe aren't hunting specific skills that translate to hunting, right? And like you're talking about like the mental part of it, right? Of like observing, like, so say for example, you're a diehard bow hunter, but you're also I'm trying to think of like something that's an activity. It's like very observation based, where you do a lot of watching maybe, or maybe chess. Let's just use chess as an example. Right? Because like you're thinking it's a puzzle, you're also kind of watching and observing. If you spent time playing chess, you may not think that it's helping your hunting, but I would say it helps slow your mind and slow your processing to where you can actually see the forest through the trees. Because how many times when we're in hunting scenarios or we're on a trip and we have 4 days or maybe we got 2 weeks, whatever the case is, but when you're on that trip, your mind, like you convince yourself that everything is urgent.
Right.
And part of like the game of being good at anything is being able to still your mind to actually have the right frame of reference in that moment at that exact time and know, not just see, but know and interpret what you're seeing.
Right.
To be able to make a good choice, a good decision that makes sense. And I think so much of getting better at the things that you like is diving into other areas that are going to challenge you so you can level up your game in other areas that you're passionate about. Because I think you do kind of reach a ceiling in your craft, whether it's a basketball player. Like how often do you see guys in the NFL or whatever, and all of a sudden in the offseason they're boxing? Yeah, it's to be in good shape, right? But it's just to try to teach themselves how to use their physicality in a different way. Right. You know what I mean? Because that ultimately will translate to them doing something on the football field that maybe they couldn't do before because they always had a certain way that they trained. And you create these ruts. I'm not saying a rut in a bad way, but you create this path of movement that your body wants to follow that it's used to. It's just like lifting. Like guys will tell you when you're lifting, for someone who hasn't lifted before, they may be stronger than the weight they can put up, but their body hasn't created that rut and motion.
Right.
That their brain goes, yep, I can do that. Yep, I know this motion. I know what it is. It's a bench press, And so like part of it is just training yourself to kind of find the right pathways at the right time. And you can do that in a multitude of ways. It doesn't have to be hunting to translate to being better at hunting.
I mean, what is hunting for most people? It's problem solving.
Yeah.
I mean, I shouldn't say that. The people who are listening to this, what they're dealing with is a series of problems they have to solve.
Correct.
That the deck gets reshuffled every time they're going to go out because the seasons progress, things have changed, whatever. So you have all these inputs and you're like, because of this, what about this? What about this? What about this? And the people who I know who I consider really good hunters, like can go anywhere, kind of do anything, the multi-species specialists, the people who are, I think there's a difference between somebody who's like, I am a master of 4 counties in this state. And they always kill a big buck. That's great. Cause that's like a specialized skill. But I love the people who are like, they're going to go to New Mexico and they're going to kill a big bull and they're going to go to Colorado and kill whatever. And you see them killing turkeys with their bow at home and they always kill big bucks wherever they go. And you're just like, those people are master problem solvers and they're always good at other shit. They almost always are in really good shape. So they've solved the problem of motivation, right? Like and I know that I know people get sick of hearing this, but I fundamentally believe it to be true. Like, I think the thing that holds us back on our hunting, we like to find outside reasons because we don't want to admit that we're not good at it or we don't put enough in or whatever. But I think the things that hold us back are between our ears, almost always, right? And it's the same thing in almost anything that's worth it, right? Like, you want to get in shape. It's not that your body can't do it. Everybody will tell, well, I have bad knees. I have this, I have that. Go swim, go do this. Like, there's a solve for that. What it is you're finding an excuse not to do it. And we all do it, right? But the people who get past that and figure it out and go, I'm just going to figure out a way to be a runner, even though I hate running and everybody hates running and blah, blah, blah. It's like those people are often also good at other stuff. And it's because instead of meeting a problem and going, that's an excuse to not try this thing or do this thing, they go, I just have to solve it. And you see that. I mean, when you were looking for an example and you brought up chess, the first thing that popped into my head that's like a activity you can do that often reminds me of some level of deer hunting is when I'm training dogs, because most of what I'm doing is watching them for their behavior and their reactions, right? Like, I ask them to do something and hopefully they deliver and then I love them up and we're great, right? But it's totally dependent on distractions, on how hyped up that dog is. What kind of bumper am I using? What environment are we in? Is the wind smoking and they can smell everything in the woods next to us? What's going on where you're reading that situation? So you're already, before you even start, if you actually want to get a good training session, and especially with like a younger dog, you're like, where can I facilitate a certain level of challenge that won't be so much for this dog to overcome? And you get it wrong a lot, right? Or you're like, oh, I thought we were going to show up here, but there's somebody, walking their dog over there, or there's a soccer game going on or something. And it's like so tied into all of the mental stuff you put in before it, and then actually implementing it and realizing that whatever you thought was going to be probably isn't. And so then you have to adapt to that. And it's like, and it's also a long game thing. So you're like, you can go get a little bit of a lesson today, which means nothing unless there's a lesson tomorrow and the next day and the next day for the next 2 years or whatever. And it starts, and so like, to keep that one rolling, when I hang out with somebody who's a really good dog trainer, like legit, not just a weekend warrior like me, they can see into the future. And they can predict dog behavior. And I always think about that because I'm like, the best hunters I know are like, they're going to do this. I believe it. And when they get it wrong, they go, that's probably why I got it wrong, but I think they're going to do this now. And when you have that confidence built up over time, even if you get it wrong 4 or 5 days in a row, and the 6th day, that sucker comes through and they kill it. And it's like, everybody's like, oh my God, that's like amazing. And it is. But the foundational work that was done there is all of those little hard decisions and just like finding that motivation and just being like, here's this problem, and putting yourself in hunting situations where you're going to have problems, which is the opposite of what we kind of sell to everybody, is like, get your hands on some land, put in the food, put in the box blind, stay the hell out, let those deer get real comfortable, then show up and kill them, which is great. Whatever, go nuts for donuts. But for a lot of people that are listening to this that want to be better, that's how you do it. You just do the thing that you don't want to do.
Yeah, 100%, man. Like for me, it's probably not a shock to people who are listening to this. Certainly probably not a shock to you as we talk about this stuff. But for me, it was actually training in the gym. It was training jiu-jitsu, really, because my biggest hang up probably is, I'll be the first to admit it, is discipline, right? And people will say, well, dude, that sounds crazy, because like you go and you do these hunts where you hunt for like days upon days on end, right? Solo, by myself, you train, you work hard at that, et cetera, et cetera. But the reason why I can do that, and I know me, like I'm a volume person. I have to be able to go just, I don't want to say grind because I hate that word, but I got to be able to not have to rely on motivation because it's fleeting. I have to rely on discipline and the willingness to know that I'm going to do really shitty stuff today, but it's going to benefit me. Right. And that has to be like the pot of gold for me at the end of the rainbow. And I got to be okay with that. And that's kind of like the one thing that even year round. So it's hard for me to do that just in hunting season, because if I don't create that kind of pattern, if you will, or that kind of schedule of just doing hard shit that sucks all the time, when I get to hunting season, and if I haven't done it all year, it takes me, what I found was like after I started training, I looked back at like the years prior to before I had started, it would take me a little while in the season to kind of like get up to speed to where it's like I was willing to like hike that ridge right whenever I don't really want to, or go out when it's really hot and where I'd be like, it's hot, man, ain't nothing going to be moving, like all the reasons why anyone else would come up with to not go do something, right? But what I found was interesting was after I was training for a little while, it was just all year round I do shit that's hard, and some days I don't want to do at all, but I still go do it. And so it made it a lot easier whenever hunting season rolls around and it's freezing ass cold out and it's 4:00 in the morning and I don't want to go do this thing. I'm just like, this is just what I do today. And I always enjoy it. And there's always a benefit to me at the end. And I never look back on it and go, man, I wish I wouldn't have got up that morning and went to hunt. I always look back on it and think, man, I'm glad I did that today. I got to watch the sunrise. I got to see this. Even if I didn't kill the deer I was after. But the crazy thing happened was my hunts got way better, because it was just, I was willing to do the thing that sucked more often. Right. And when you said put yourself in bad spots, again, translates right back to jujitsu. Because when you get to a point, in your training where you start to be, like you're not the bottom of the room anymore. You're in the middle or the top third of the room as far as like your competency and capability. Right. And so now the way you get better is that you put yourself in bad spots willingly with people who maybe aren't as skilled as you. So you continually are in them, because otherwise you have a lack of opportunity to be in them. And then you get less comfortable or less adapted to those bad positions. Right. And I feel like it's the same thing when you're bow hunting, like you were saying, where you have to go out and sometimes maybe it's that bottom I'm going to try to hunt in Iowa, where I'm going to go put myself in maybe a little bit of a risky spot because I gotta flex that muscle. Right. Like because if I don't, I'm never going to take the risk, whenever I should take the risk, or I'm never going to identify when the risk is worth it. And that's the part I think that we miss when we don't do hard stuff continuously, is that it's hard to start that engine when the season starts.
Right. Well, totally, dude. And I think, like as you're talking about that, I think one of the things that holds a lot of people back, sort of ride sidecar with that, is I think we set the wrong goals. I think we just focus way too much on just, it has to be this big or this old. But I think we don't look at it like, what are the fun parts, right? Because like you think about just off the cuff, like you want to go hunting? Hell yeah, I want to go hunting. I love hunting. But like a lot of hunting sucks, and a lot of it is a lot of work, and a lot of it is a pain in the ass.
The idea of hunting is great.
Right.
Hunting.
It's like camping.
Yeah.
The idea of camping is always awesome. Camping half the time sucks. Just the way terrible. It is. Right. Yeah. But I always think about that. I'm like, what do I enjoy about deer hunting? I'm like, I like to find them. Like I like a new spot. I like to find them. I freaking love putting that sight pin on the side of a deer and shooting it. I just love it. I love the blood trailing, the butchering. There's a lot of parts of it that I'm almost always, every time it happens, I'm like, hell yeah, like that was great. And I always think about that because people give me shit all the time for shooting little bucks sometimes. And I'm like, I like to eat them. I like to shoot them. And I love going into a situation where I'm like, this is brand new to me. And if an 85-inch, 2.5-year-old comes through, I'm going to be stoked. And if he does, I am. And I get to go through that process, that feeling of like your heart rate, like your heart rate's going up. When do I draw? Where, like what distance is he going to be at? Like hit my anchor, find everything, like execute. And a lot of people kind of, they jump over that part. They focus on the big buck stuff too early, and they don't get those reps into that stuff that's actually the really fun part of it, like the really exciting part, right? Like it's not exciting to go hunting when every deer that comes down the trail is going to be a disappointment except one of them, because he's mostly not coming. You know what I mean? And so that's one of the reasons why I preach that traveling game so much, is I'm like, man, if you can't get yourself past that at home because you're like, I got to hold out for a big one or whatever, that's why you travel, man. Like
Yeah.
just to give yourself the freedom to like do this stuff in a way that you want to and solve for it, you know?
Yeah.
And once you start doing that, you start to realize like, now I'm going to find ways to get myself to do the hard thing because I know there's going to be more parts of it that I enjoy. You know, it's like
Mhm.
when you talk about working out or you talking about jujitsu, like a lot of that stuff just is not really that much fun
Mhm.
in the moment.
Yeah.
But it always feels good. Like I
Yeah.
think about this with my daughters with fishing. Like when you were talking about earlier about just kind of like some of the people you admire and how they figure out woodsmanship. In my brain, I can't separate that from the people I know who are really good at fishing, like really
Right.
good, because it's
Yeah.
the same thing. Like
Mhm.
there's just like, it's so fun sometimes when you fish with somebody who's sort of on the same wavelength as you, because like something will change, right? The clouds cover up the sun for a little bit, and everybody in the boat who knows what they're doing ties on something different or picks up a different rod. And it's just a it's like if you hunt the mountains with people who know how to hunt the mountains and you watch your buddies go ahead of you on the trail, everybody switches their bow from one hand to the other at certain points, or
Mhm.
like, you know what I mean? There's just like this
Yeah.
automatic shit that like people who aren't experienced in it don't.
Mhm.
That stuff is so cool.
Yeah.
But I mean, back to that point about like figuring out how to make it fun. That's your responsibility. Like you
Yeah.
have to find the reward in all of this stuff. And if you go into it and it's 140 inch or bust and you're just not very good at this, or you haven't killed a lot of them, it's that's going to hold you back so
Yeah.
much. Like you're not going to have fun, and you're going to look at it like something that I can't get right. Like you don't, when you start running, you're not like, I'm going to run a 2.5 hour marathon. Like you're just
Mhm.
not. You have
Yeah.
to start small and work your way up and have fun along the way and learn that process of giving yourself those rewards and that enjoyment. Otherwise it'll never stick.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you said there is so true, man. Like you gotta, if you focus on the things that are the fun part of whatever the thing is that you're doing, I promise you, you are going to get better at it. And actually, if you just continue to focus on the things that are fun as part of like whatever it is, if it's bow hunting, if there's components of bow hunting that you just find really, really fun, if you're a person who loves to shoot their bow and you love to scout, right? But sometimes hunting for you isn't a lot of fun per se, right? Because like you don't kill something. If you just have fun and you scout a lot and you shoot your bow a lot, and that's fun to you, I promise you at some point you're going to have fun hunting because you're going to get better at it, right?
Right.
It's like I think about and it's just top of mind because I just got done watching like the Big Ten wrestling tournament, and Penn State dog walked the entire conference, and they're going to dog walk the national championship tournament, right? They're just that much better than everybody. Bunch of good guys on that team, bunch of hunters on that team also. But when you listen to them talk about their approach to things, it's, yes, they get better, great coaching, they're dedicated, all those things. But those guys are so bought into it just being a game, and that the win or loss isn't the thing. It's the having fun. It's the relationships. It's the being coached by the best coaches on the planet. It's all the things that they love about the sport. And the byproduct is that they got better at wrestling and they win a lot, right? But that wasn't necessarily the goal. And it was funny that we're talking about this because I was just watching this small clip of Jordan Burroughs. I don't know if you know who Jordan Burroughs is, but so Jordan Burroughs is like one of the most decorated Olympic wrestling athletes like the U.S. has probably ever had, right? He won, I think maybe 2 Olympic gold medals, if I'm not mistaken, a bunch of world championships. Like he's a great ambassador for grappling. And his son wrestles in like New Jersey, like not far from here. And you'll see him at like some of the local tournaments and stuff like that once in a while. And I think he was working with Jason Nolf, who was a Penn State alumni, a couple-time national champ, and they were doing a camp with him, I think, at Jason's place in like Texas, if I'm not mistaken. I think it's where that was at. But he was talking with like a bunch of kids that were, probably no older. Like the oldest was probably like 13 or something like that. They were like high school or elementary school to like to middle kids, and he was talking to them about wrestling, kind of like trying to teach them about the win and loss isn't important, because especially kids at that age, like that can be depending on the parents, right, can be very, just like hunting. If you have a bad experience early, it's probably a bad experience for you in perpetuity, right? And so what he kind of said to them was, said, hey, who likes to go to arcades? And of course, all the kids like to go to arcades and play games and stuff like that, right? He was like, yeah, he's like, it's great. He's like, you go and you play all these games, and he's like, and you get all these tickets, and he's like, he's like, is that fun? They're like, yeah. He's like, and you spend hours, and it's just like you have fun with all your friends, and you're playing these games, and at the end of the day, he's like, you have all these tickets, like, and then you go trade all these tickets and all that fun you had, you trade it in, and you get a whoopee cushion, right? He's like, which is okay. He's like, but wasn't it a lot of fun playing the games and getting the tickets and stuff like that? And they're like, yeah, you know. He's like, now you go to a wrestling tournament. He was like, you know, and he's like, you know, and not everybody gets a trophy. He's like, and if you don't win your matches and you don't get a trophy at the end of the tournament, he's like, that's not very fun, is it? And they're like, no. He's like, but what if getting to go wrestle for a whole day? What if that was, he's like, is that fun? And they're like, yeah. He's like, well, what if you loved wrestling like you loved Roblox and like you loved Fortnite and if you loved wrestling that much, would it matter if you got a trophy at the end of the day or not, at the end of that tournament or not? They're like, no, because it's fun. And he's like, and his message was, if you keep the priority, the fun, right, all the other stuff comes with it.
Right.
Right.
It's great.
And then your focus is always just on having fun, and the evolution and the learning happens as a byproduct of it. But the moment you change it to the end goal, it's the whoopee cushion. Right. And I just thought it was, he's such a good ambassador for the sport, like for grappling in general. And he does such a good job with kids from what I heard, because I know he coaches and stuff as well. But it just made me think about hunting and how, like, we focused often on the things that are the least fun, right? If we spent more time focusing on the stuff that was actually fun, we eventually would get the trophies, right?
Right.
But we often come home with the whoopee cushion, because the fun part is the part we spend the least amount of time paying attention to. And to kind of bring it all full circle, it's like, and that's why Penn State, I think, is so successful, right? In grapplings, because they're very competitive. Yes, they're guys who are like, have Olympic dreams and aspirations, and a lot of them are already on world teams and stuff like that. But when you listen to them talk, it is always about, they don't call it the process necessarily, right? Because I think some people can see that as being dull, but it's just, they love wrestling like we love hunting, only they've committed to loving it, you know, all the components of it, as opposed to just loving the end result of it. Right. And that's the difference, right? If you want to be great at hunting, and you want to upskill, and you want to be super good at this thing, you can find other ways outside of hunting to do it, but you got to fall in love with it and for it to be fun.
Well, that's such a good point, man. And I don't think you'll fall in love with hunting if you're following a bunch of other people's rules.
Exactly.
Like,
yes.
I think, when you were telling that about the wrestlers, one thing that I started doing with my daughters, fishing wise, because hunting and fishing wise, I'm trying to get them to just make their own decisions and own a bigger part of the process, because they're at the age now, they're 14, you know, and they've killed a bunch of stuff, but most of it was spoon fed to them, you know.
Right. They know a couple things now. Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to get them to think it through instead of just default to me. And so fishing wise, 2 years ago, I started doing this with them, where I was like, all right, guys, it's the middle of the day. We have nothing going on. We're going to go have a 2-hour fishing tournament. One of you is going to be in the front of the boat the first hour, and one of you is going to be in the back of the boat, and we're going to switch, right? And I'm like, I'm not casting. You guys make the call. You can ask me, you know, Dad, should I throw this? Should I throw that? The minute we started doing that, I would always say, you can have all the cash in my wallet, and it might be $4, it might be 20, whatever. Like,
right. They
don't know. They just know there's a cash prize of some level, right? And if it's $4, they get pissed. If it's 20, they're happy, whatever. But the minute that it goes just from them being used to me sort of holding their hand and them catching a bunch of fish, because I say, throw this, throw it there, you know, whatever, position the boat. And now, you know, we're going along these islands, and it's like, yeah, you can throw the rocks here, and now there's a weed bed that extends out here. The minute we started doing that and there was something at stake, they started thinking like, Dad, should I throw this? I'm thinking about this, like maybe this color. And I just looked at it and I was like, it feels weird to sort of gamify it, but at the same time, it instantly triggered their competitiveness against each other. and it got them thinking about what we're doing and why this would work, or why there'd be a fish there and not there, or whatever. And then when they hook one, then it's like on, right? Because now you got to get it in the net, and now it's like that moment when you're shooting a deer. It's not just watching them, like now it's go time. Like now is when the consequences happen, right? And it changed the flavor of the whole thing, and just sort of got them on the path to start thinking about that. And I'm like, there's such a good lesson in there for all of us. Is like, I remember, when I was growing up, like still hunting was a thing. Like nobody still hunts anymore other than the big woods, a little bit of the track and buck type shit.
Right.
But I used to just go do that a lot. Like I'm like, oh my God, it's going to rain on Thursday. I can't wait to just go sneak through and try to shoot one from the ground. I killed a handful of deer doing that in a lot of hours of not killing, mostly every time I did it.
Right.
But it wasn't like I didn't care. Like that was an in the moment thing that I always enjoyed, because it's like it's sort of that thing like when you're fishing a new stream, right? What's around the next bend? Like we don't get to do that. We don't allow ourselves to do that whitetail wise very often, but that's so fun. And it's like, I think about stuff like that and I go, I feel really, really lucky having, and I'm glossing this over because I had total mental breakdowns on deer hunting for a long time, and I still can. Like I'm still capable of totally losing my shit. Right. Like I don't want this isn't a Disney movie, right? Like there was a lot of real frustration, but we weren't like constrained. We were just like, oh, well, you want to go. And my dad was really good about this. Like, well, you want to go sit here, or should we just go try this? Like sit on this fence line, because sometimes they cross there. It almost never worked, but it sometimes did. But we were just free to try things. And it just helps you develop. It helps you enjoy it, and it helps you develop, because you're not sitting there constantly thinking like I'm doing the wrong thing. Like if you're out there hunting, I don't know, you're doing something right, lean into it instead of just the mindset of like, well, I shouldn't be here because it's October 5th. Who cares? Like go hunt.
Go have fun, man. Like, and that was partially, for me, picking up the trad bow, hunting more from the ground was just, how can I like infuse more fun for me? And just carrying that bow as opposed to my compound made it more fun. It made it different, and spending more time on the ground because I just like to move. And like, you don't want to move. Like you want to figure out where we're going to go and sit. It's like, that's just not as fun for me. Now there's sometimes when I'll do it, when I think I'm really like in the right spot, as you said earlier, like I'm on the X and I know this is where I need to be, then maybe I'll get into a tree or whatever. But more and more, I just like to explore and move and carry my trad bow and just see what happens. Like that is fun to me.
Right.
And once I started doing those things, it's not a surprise, started getting better at it. Right. Started seeing like more ground like during the hunting season. And for me, that's what I kind of learned about myself. Not only is it fun, but I actually start to get to see more of the full picture because I'm moving a little bit more, and I'm able to kind of understand how deer are using these things like landscapes and stuff like that in real time. Where if you're a weekend warrior, you don't get that luxury, right? You got to try to make a decision and go in and hunt, and like hopefully it works out here. Where I've taken more of the approach, I'll take a little less time more frequently and just move more, because I want to see how things are playing out. That way, when I do finally make a sit, I kind of have seen a lot of the puzzle pieces for the week, and I just kind of prefer to do it that way now because it's more fun for me to hunt like that.
Yep.
But
that's the secret sauce, buddy. You got to figure out how to like it.
Yeah. If you don't like it, like, what are you doing it for? You know what I mean? It's like, now it's not saying like you were saying, it's not all rainbows and unicorns, right? It's like, there's plenty of times where hunting's I'm frustrated and I get mad, right? There's plenty of times with jiu-jitsu where I don't want to go, where it's like, I'm in a funk and it's just not, for a couple week period of time, it just doesn't feel fun. Like I'm not progressing. I'm not learning anything. Like, not that I'm not learning, but nothing's retaining. Like, you get into those funks, and that's normal. That doesn't mean that you've fallen out of love with the thing. That just means you might need to just divert your focus,
right?
And come back to it, with, because, distance makes the heart grow fonder. It's not just a saying, there's some truth to it. You get a little space from something, you come back and you kind of see things with fresh eyes again, that happens to me often in hunting and in other areas, but
for sure.
Well, shoot, man, we've been chopping it up for about an hour and a half, man. I want to be sensitive to your time. I know you probably got a bunch of stuff to do. You probably got some snow to go shovel at this point already since we started recording.
I got to go get those dogs outside. I got to go toss a bumper around here for a little bit before it gets dark.
Nice. Well, buddy, let people know where they can find out. I know you're always at Meat Eater. Everything's there. Let them know what you got going on, where they can find you.
TheMeatEater.com, all the articles, all the podcasts, films, everything. It's all there now. Pretty easy to find. It's a good time of year to go explore there too, because everybody's the cabin fever has peaked.
Yeah.
And we all still need a little bit of entertainment because we're bored and we're waiting for those turkeys to start gobbling. So yeah, TheMeatEater.com. But I appreciate it, buddy.
Awesome, buddy. Thank you.
All right, folks, that is a wrap for today's show. I'd like to thank all of you for listening. And if you haven't yet, please head over to iTunes and leave us a 5-star rating. And be sure to subscribe to the podcast. And hell, while you're at it, head over to YouTube and give us a sub there too. I'd be super appreciative if you do those couple things for me. And before I shut this thing down, I need to give a big shout out to our partners who continue to help us make this podcast possible. Tacticam, Osseo Gear, Hawk Optics, Face Off E-Bikes, and Lathrop & Sons Boot Company. And until next time, we'll see y'all.